Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's David Dunlap Observatory Park Project Steering Committee meeting. To those watching online, welcome, and to everybody here in chambers. This is an in-person, in-house meeting. We have one regret from one committee member, Marnie Beck. She's unable to join us today. So we can get right to business. We have in front of us an agenda. So this is my call to order. And if I could have a member of committee, please move and adopt the adoption of the agenda so we can move forward. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Godwin Chan. All those in favor, just raise the hands. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Then agenda item 4 is the adoption of previous minutes. 4.1 minutes, David Dunlap Observatory Park Steering Committee meeting are held on February the 6th, 23. I trust. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I skipped a line. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Okay. Now we go to adoption of the previous minutes, which was the meeting that was held on February the 6th. 2023, quite some time ago. I trust that all members of committee have read the minutes. And do you have any comments? No? Okay. We good? Okay. Could I have a member of committee move that forward, please? So we can, thank you, Councillor Shu. All those in favor of adoption of the minutes? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So our first order of business today is we have a delegation. The esteemed Dr. Ian Shelton from the DDO Defenders is here to give us his words on a number of items. And welcome, Dr. Shelton. It's a pleasure to have you with us as always. The podium is yours.
Thank you, councillors, staff. My name is Dr. Ian Shelton. I'm the chair of the not-for-profit organization called the David Dunlap Observatory Defenders, aka DDOD. As I'm sure you know, the David Dunlap Observatory was an active player in the development of radio astronomy. The city has recognized this in their Cultural Heritage Landscape Bylaw 100-09, mentioning the work of Dr. Ernie Sequist in providing the first accurate flux standard through the measurement of the brightest radio source in the constellation of Cassiopeia, known as Cas-A. The bylaw specifically recognizes the building known as the Radio Shack to the east of the administration building where Dr. Sequist housed his radio equipment as part of the cultural heritage landscape. The DDOD Defenders have reviewed the last staff report presented to the committee and noted that a consultant has assessed the building and has recommended the building be decommissioned. Our organization would like to learn what the RHDDO Steering Committee envisions will happen to this building. And I'd also like to use this opportunity to inform the committee that the existing antenna and tower beside the Radio Shack is not believed to be the one that Dr. Sequist actually used to make his important measurements. Okay. Rather, there are two other towers to the east and the west of the surviving tower, each holding an inverted pyramid-shaped antenna that made his observations. So I surveyed the DDO grounds about 15 years ago, and I found that the foundation for these two towers actually did still exist. And so DDO believes that it would be in the public's interest to reconstruct these two antennae and incorporate them in an active and informative display at the Radio Shack that shows the public the signal from the Milky Way galaxy as it passes overhead every day, rain or shine, and other such observations. Similarly, we believe that it would be valuable to reconstruct the zigzag antenna at the existing tower to show how radio waves can be used to tell us the sun's current activity regardless of the weather. Okay, so providing these informative active displays would help the public understand the discoveries and the important past of radio astronomy research conducted at the observatory, at the DDO, and support current STEM programs at schools in Richmond Hill and throughout the GTA. On a slightly different matter, DDO would like to point out that in Table 3 in the staff report, the last staff report, it implies that all that needed repairs and restoration work in the interior of the 74-inch dome and the administration building have now all been completed. But we see that there is still lots left to do. So can the committee please provide information about the replacement or such items such as the replacement and repair of failing ceiling panels, repairing or replacing the ground level floor at the dome, restoring or replacing electrical wiring to and on the 74-inch telescope, and repainting the interior and both buildings. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton. Appreciate that. We can definitely we can get into some discussion about that. Unfortunately, it's not on the agenda, but we can definitely get into some discussion about that. Whether we do it today, we will definitely do it. If it's not done today, we will definitely do it at future meetings. But I agree with you that this meeting, we can definitely include about the antennas. So without further ado, I'm going to, and I also want to recognize Dr. Tuba Kokte, who's here, and she is Dr. Shelton's wife and right-hand person. So I'm going to go straight to, we have a presentation under scheduled business, Richmond Hill David Dunlap Observatory Park Project Update 6.1. We have a presentation by Bob Levesque, who's our Director of Infrastructure Delivery. This is a 34-minute presentation, and I'm going to hand the mic first over to Mr. Palomacero, who is our Executive Director of Infrastructure, and he will introduce Mr. Levesque. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be before Council and the committee again today. Director Levesque will be going over the current status of the projects completed to date at the Richmond Hill David Dunlap Observatory. He and his team are here to answer questions following the presentation, many of which include some of the concerns by the deputant as well. So to that, I'll pass it off to Director Levesque.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to present our fall update to the committee today. I look forward to the discussion, and I do have some of my team members here today to answer any questions at the end. So next slide. We have a full agenda today. We will revisit the project timeline, look at some of the grant funding announcements, dive into some current projects and initiatives, a look at the capital budget and forecast, a discussion on the Radio Shack and the pump house, and then a brief discussion on our next steps. Next slide. So here is our project timeline. It's been updated since the last time we met in February. If we focus our attention down to the bottom line, the green dots represent projects that have been completed, with the last green dot being assignment 2, and that's just putting the finishing touches on the trails right now. And I'm going to provide an update on that in the presentation. The next 2 dots are yellow dots, and the yellow dots represent projects that are in flight or in design. And then the white one is for future projects as well. Now, the first yellow dot is the CN Overpass Trail. And the second one is assignment 4, which is the site servicing and the Panhandle parking lot. We had in the previous presentation the pickleball hub in that assignment. So based on some decisions made by council, and I'm going to go over that, it has been pulled out of assignment 4 for the time being. And we also have some recommendations in the report regarding a combination of assignments 4 and 5, 5 being the first white dot, which is reflective of the Elvis Stoico Arena parking and the 16th Avenue entrance feature. Next slide, please. So I'm very pleased to reiterate that the RHDDO received 2 grants this year, and I'd like to really give kudos to the strategy and government relations team who did the legwork to secure the funding. The first was in May of this year. Majid Johari, Member of Parliament for Richmond Hill, announced an investment of over $209,000 for the Richmond Hills Interim Trail Project. And this came out of the Canada Community Revitalization Fund. Next slide. So in addition, another big federal announcement occurred September 15th with regards to the active transportation funding the city received for the RHDDO pedestrian bridge and trail construction. So Majid Johari was back and announced an investment of $3.18 million through the active transportation fund. So really good news for us. We always are striving to seek out additional funding. So that does help with the capital funding of some of our projects and initiatives. All right, next slide, please. So next, we have an update into our current projects and activities, and I'm going to start with assignment 2. You can see on the diagram on the right, the blue lines represent trails that were completed last year. This year, we focused on the red trails. So the red lines, AA was a multi-use path. There was a paved 400-meter section of trail. And the BB line is a nature trail, and that was about 880 meters of stone trail. Also, in regards to assignment 2, we have some traffic and parking studies and wayfinding and signage. So I'm going to go into those in a little bit. Next slide. So our goal with the trail construction, and we brought those forward, is to increase passive recreation into the park as soon as possible. The picture on the left is the multi-use path. It's paved, and that's the 400-meter section. And then the one on the right is the nature trail, and that's about 880 meters. It's a great opportunity for our residents to come and explore the park, and even a chance to see deer that are in the park as well. So it's really taking shape. Next slide. Okay, excuse me. Assignment 2 included a traffic and parking study. And we looked at the demand for all of the potential uses and came up with some plans for additional parking in the DDO. You'll see on the figure on the right there, parking lot A is the existing north parking lot. It has approximately 44 spaces, and this is probably the spot that everyone uses now when we go visit the DDO. We have identified some potential future parking areas. The first being the observatory parking noted as B, and that's 70 spaces. Observatory lane parking is identified as C, and that's an additional 14 spaces, and that's part of the bridge project that's going in. The Elmsley parking, an additional 20 spaces at the proposed Elmsley Visitor Center. And items E and F in the Panhandle are an additional 86 spots proposed for the Panhandle. And I've also shown here the Elvis Stoico parking area. Although it's not officially part of the proposed parking, it's an existing parking lot, but it does have opportunities for overflow. So during peak periods, especially in the summer when the arena parking is not really actively used that much, it's an opportunity for people to park there as well. Next slide, please. All right, so what we've done now is we've taken a look at what special events may increase those peak parking demands. And the two that we looked at was the picnic area and the grass amphitheater. So during peak times, we expect an additional 175 parking spaces required. As a result of that, we had a look at the area around the park, so about a 400-meter radius, and identified which streets had on-street parking and which streets had no parking. And based on that analysis, we've got the capacity for an additional 590 parking spots during weekdays and about 545 parking spots during Saturdays. So we're confident that even during peak periods, there's ample spaces for people to park and easily gain access into the park. Next slide, please. So assignment 2 also includes a wayfinding signage study that maintains the placement, type, and messaging principles from the Richmond Park signage strategy and is looking at customizing the signage to maximize the RHDDO Park identity and branding. This slide and the next slide show the initial 4 concept designs received for the 16th Avenue entrance. Now, this entrance will be the largest of the signs based on its proximity to 16th Avenue. The other park entrance features will be very similar to this, like from the local roads, but just a smaller version. And the design includes elements that tie into the observatory. So you can basically see from the shape of the sign, the steel arch and stars that illuminate and backlighting for the lettering as well. Next slide. These are the additional 3 concepts prepared. Currently, the 16th Avenue entrance includes a sign for the Elvis Stoico Arena. So to ensure the focus is on the DDO, we will likely decommission that sign and put the name up on the arena. The arena name then could, be prominent on the building. We're also exploring how an LED message board might be incorporated into the sign and into the entrance feature. It may be part of the sign. It may be a separate standalone feature. So we're still working out those design elements right now. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're moving on to assignment 3, which is the pedestrian cyclist bridge and the entry plaza parking lot and trail connection. Now, the fundamental goal of the bridge crossing is to provide a safe and convenient connection into the park from Observatory Lane on the west side of the CN line. The design of the bridge has continued since our last meeting, and the construction of the bridge is anticipated for 2024. It's going to be a lengthy construction process. It will take us into 2025 to complete it. But the bridge will not only enhance accessibility and connectivity into the park, but will also add a distinctive visual element to the park and surrounding community. The arch bridge and the curving ramp aims to create elegant form that blends into the landscape and complements the form of the observatory building. Also want to note that staff are working proactively with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation to ensure that their interests are understood and protected through the course of the bridge design and construction, as well as any potential future work at the DDO. Next slide, please. So the design at 63 Observatory Lane includes a 14-space parking lot that I previously mentioned and a drop-off, bridge ramps, a gathering spot with seating area, lawn area, and plantings. The design of the space ties back to the observatory with an astronomy theme, form, and material palette. So for instance, the paving pattern and form is to portray the reflection of light, which ties back to the DDO reflecting telescope that uses a curved Pyrex mirror to reflect the light and form an image. And we're also investigating the use of LED lighting for the bridge with a potential for different colors that we could use for special events. If we want to have a green theme for Richmond Hill or any celebrations, we can change the color. And I just want to mention too that any proposed lighting will be dark sky compliant as per our light pollution bylaw. Next slide, please. So as you are aware, we had council directive to put a pause on Pickleball Hub at the DDO. So this pause will allow time to monitor the impacts of outdoor pickleball facilities that are being done throughout the city, facilitate a further analysis of what the combined pickleball and tennis needs are across the city. But this pause has now given us an opportunity to re-strategize a little bit of how we're going to deliver the remaining Panhandle land works. In this particular area, we've got parking, we've got an access road, we've got a multi-use trail, we've got our site servicing coming in as well. Next slide. So we ended up coming up with 4 potential options to deliver the remaining works. The first one is to basically bundle all of the remaining works into one package. That would include that site servicing, the Panhandle Road, the parking lot, and multi-use path. But we would also include in that the Elvis Stoico parking lot rehabilitation and that 16th Avenue entrance feature, which I just showed. The other alternatives basically were to break that up into components, but we felt that putting it all together as one package was our preferred solution. So next slide, please. So the assessment of the options again led to alternative 1 being preferred. It provides a coordinated design of the entire Panhandle site. Constructing it as one project offers opportunities for streamlined design, traffic enhancements, conflict prevention, reduce disruption through a lengthy construction process, and potential cost savings through economies of scale. And another benefit too is that it also allows us time to evaluate the alignment of the Panhandle access road and the arena parking lot design. So we can do that together and in conjunction with each other and come up with the best way to get traffic into the park. In this plan, we've removed the pickleball facility and added in the black dash rectangle. And that just represents a future sports facility. It could be pickleball if that comes back as a requirement. It could be the proposed sports facility that was identified originally in the master plan. So we will regrade that area, use it for passive recreation until such time as we decide on what type of sports facility would go in there. You can also see the red dash access line at the bottom there. We would shift the Panhandle Drive along the western boundary, and this would reduce traffic by the arena entrance as well, further create additional space for passive recreation just as you enter into the Panhandle area. So we'll be looking at that as well. So if council agrees to that approach, I think we'd like to combine that as one package and move ahead in 2025. Next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about solar power. The design team has investigated the use of solar power carports in the RHDDO. Now, while the use of solar energy sources supports the City of Richmond Hill sustainability requirements, it is important to consider its implementation in a site-specific context. Now, while the original request was to provide solar panels over the parking areas, we also explored 3 ways of providing solar power. And this includes solar panels in open areas, panels on building roofs, and canopies with solar panels above 14 spaces. The 14 spaces were selected as it's actually the number of EV charging stations that are proposed. And after a comprehensive review conducted by the project team, it has been determined that implementing solar technology at the David Dunlap Observatory Park is not advisable. The reasons for this include the high upfront capital cost, ongoing operational cost, and a lengthy payback period attributed to the small scale energy savings. We are aware of some other related projects in York Region that have different payback periods. We did review these projects as some of the numbers on payback vary considerably with what we've shown. It was found that our numbers include all of the capital construction costs thrown in there. So this is actual reflection of what the payback period is going to be. And in some cases, it's longer than the lifespan of the actual infrastructure. So we're not recommending it at this time. The city will continue to implement sustainability metrics program, and that allocates funds towards providing efficient fixtures, features, and equipment that's planned for the site. Next slide. So next, I'm going to go into some ongoing initiatives from 3 areas. The first is communications. One of the opportunities, I guess, realized over the past few years was the consolidation and streamlining of communications. So updates, when reported, are comprehensive of all areas of the organization, undertaking work or delivering services for the DDO. The plan is to continue with this approach and to sustain communications throughout the year, leveraging significant customer-facing milestones to tell a positive story. And all project-related DDO communications are coordinated with our communications team. Ecological restoration. As you know, the preservation and enhancement of natural areas is one of the 8 key principles in the master plan and is part of the long-term plan to restore the woodlands to a healthy forest. Natural environment staff are leading the works being undertaken, which includes the removal of invasive species, dead and hazardous trees, planting of native trees and shrubs, and invasive species management. Phase 3 of the restoration plan began this summer, and when completed in 2027, will create 1.8 hectares of woodlot and restore 1.22 hectares of meadow. To date, more than 10,000 trees and shrubs have been planted, and fencing has been installed to protect the newly planted trees from browsing deer and allow the trees to grow. Rec and culture. So exciting programs at the RHDDO include historical tours and astronomy programs with over 2,600 participants so far this year. The site is open free of charge for self-guided tours during designated hours from May to October. And summer camps provided an opportunity for over 400 children in 2023. And additional highlights include 77 private or group school bookings. We had live history theater escape day in June, and that was well attended. And monthly stargazing parties from May to September offered by RASC free of charge. This year, we had 5 film permits issued, including a music video, a documentary, and 2 films. Next slide, please. So we have been delivering on early priorities in a phased and financially sustainable way while achieving our objectives. And here is a summary of the remaining early priority projects that have been grouped into assignment packages. You can see the project groupings on the left, as well as the proposed years for the design and construction. So the design elements are in blue and the construction phases are in orange. And this forecast includes updated project budgets following a costing exercise this year, undertaken to prepare our 10-year capital budget. As we've been tendering our projects this year, we've identified significant increases in tender prices, and this is mainly due from supply chain issues as a result of leftover from COVID and significant inflationary pressures. So the previous cost estimates were developed around 2016. So it was important to re-examine these estimates and come up with some more accurate costing based on the recent market trends. And it is also important to note that the Capital Sustainability Steering Committee has been reactivated this year. And in 2024, we're planning to reassess the delivery packages, the timings, and the cost estimates of all remaining projects, including the medium and long-term priorities, and present our recommendations to the CSSC with respect to a sustainable approach for delivery of those remaining items. Next slide. So based on past discussions at the committee, we've re-examined the Radio Shack and the pump house. The Radio Shack is currently fenced off to restrict access to the building. VD Architects completed a building condition assessment of the Radio Shack, and the assessment found some hazardous conditions in that the interior wallboards, vinyl floor tiles, contain asbestos, and the building is in an advanced state of disrepair, with floor, wall, and ceiling finishes being unsalvageable. Based on these findings, the recommendation is to decommission the building due to its health and safety concerns, its condition, and significant state of disrepair. However, the Radio Shack is identified as one of the heritage attributes within the DDO. Whereas the observatory building, the administration building, and the Elmsley are identified as built heritage structures that have a significant heritage value. It's very important to us that the historical attributes be recognized, and we suggest that it be commemorated with a design feature as well as a heritage plaque. If the committee approves this recommendation, the design team will work with the city's Heritage Urban and Design section to submit an application and design, which will go to the Heritage Committee for review and further approvals from council as a whole. And just to refer to Dr. Shelton's comments about the antenna, we can incorporate that definitely into the design feature that we're coming up with. And we will consult with our stakeholders as well. Next slide, please. So next up is the pump house. This was originally located near Bayview Avenue, and it was used to supply water to the observatory. It's currently stored in the existing parking area, protected by concrete barriers, and the openings have been boarded up to protect the building. Staff will report back in the future on the potential to utilize the pump house as an electrical or mechanical building in association with Assignment 6, which is the playground, the water feature element, and washroom, following a further evaluation and consultant study. So we're just not quite there yet with those assignments, so that will be included as part of that. Next slide, please. So as we conclude the presentation, I just want to go over what we anticipate are the next steps for the project. The pedestrian and cycling bridge and the panhandle works will continue on. And of course, that's subject to capital budget approval. We have to assess the medium and long-term DDO priorities through the Capital Sustainability Committee, and that will include our recommendations for delivery. And we will continue with phase 3 ecological restoration. Next slide. So we've reiterated our staff report recommendations here. I'm not going to reiterate them, but they're there for your reference. And this concludes our presentation, and we can open it up for questions.
Thank you, Director Levesque. That is an excellent presentation. Deeply appreciated all the work that you and staff have put into this. It's helps this committee to really understand the major points here that are necessary for us to make recommendations to council. I would just like to take a moment to recognize other council members and committee members who are in council today. We have Vice Chair, Councillor Michael Shue is with us. We have.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the staff for the great work and for the presentation. It's quite comprehensive and we admire your hard work of your team. I have a few questions. Can I ask here? Yeah, I have a
Let's bring it forward first, and then I just want to introduce the other committee members, but you're welcome to bring it forward.
Okay, no problem. So I have a few questions to bring out first. Regarding the pedestrian and cyclist rail overpass and at 63 Observatory Lane, I recall that there are 3 businesses located at 45, 49, and 53 on the same road. Is there a plan to relocate these businesses?
At this time, are they owned by the city or are they in development applications? Is that what you're referring to?
There are 3 businesses now currently there. And I'm just wondering if they will be relocated or removed to somewhere after the trail to be built.
Yeah, so the city has no plans to relocate businesses. We will be, we own that one parcel of land and there will be a connection provided to the Bridgeview Park. But as far as existing businesses or residents, this shouldn't really impact them. When we did our concept analysis and review, we selected what we thought was the best alignment for the bridge that would be least impact to residents and businesses.
Okay. Through the chair, my second question is in reference to the entrance signage. What's the cost differences between option 1 and 2 regarding the slide number 10 and 11?
Yeah,
is there any cost difference?
So we're still working out some of those details. So these are just concepts at this point. We would like to get the committee's feedback on some of the concepts that we put together. We can refine those and report back to the committee on costs and things like that. But at this point, we haven't costed it out, especially with related to an LED message board and things. We'd like to incorporate that as well. And then once we've established the cost, we will refine the budget in the capital budget.
Okay, and my last question is regarding the solar power evaluation. Will you offer any guidance or recommendations concerning about these 3 available options? Do you have any recommendation or?
Sorry, what was your question?
Okay, regarding the solar. The solar power evaluation, you will offer 3 options there.
So we're recommending not to use solar power at this time. So there's extremely high cost to install it and the payback period is very long. So normally you'd like to make your money back quickly. And then after a certain period of time, it's free, but this payback period is actually longer than the lifespan of the infrastructure. So you're not really gaining any advantages to installing it. There may be some technology improvements in the future. So what we'd like to do is maybe defer this to re-examine it in the future as a potential. But at this time, we don't think it's financially viable. But having said that, if the committee decides they want to have it there and vote on it, we can bring it to council and get it approved. We can get the funding and do it regardless. So I'll just put that up there.
Okay, I see. So that's all about, do we have round 2 or something like that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will make my comment later. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shue. So the other members of committee who are present here are committee members Gloria Marsh and committee member David Kay. And we also have with us committee member Deputy Mayor Godwin Chan. And other members of council who are not on committee but are present are Mayor David West. He's here with us today as well. Thank you for joining us. And Ward 2 Councillor Scott Thompson. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, so we have this on the floor, moved by Councillor Shue. So we can now open the floor to 2 discussions. If I could have by a show of hands, please, who would like to be on the list? We can start from that. Okay, Committee Member Marsh, go ahead. Just press your mic. There you go.
Thank you very much. First of all, I have to commend the design I have a design background and I'm so impressed with with everything, really. The one thing that was really funky was the second design for the signage. It looked precarious, like could that be susceptible to vandalism? That might be something, the stability of it. It looked fabulous, but could that be something that would be, you know, a consideration?
Yeah, I think from a structural point of view, these things, although it looks precarious, it would have deep footings.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
would be safe from that perspective.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have to consider is people that will walk up to the sign and potentially try to interact with it. So those are thoughts that, like, we come up with these concepts, but we want to have something that's safe and low maintenance, I guess.
Okay. So the next thing is, I got into trouble for harassing you. But and just to explain, because we made presentations to a number of municipalities about solar, and I know that Newmarket is using it in the MULOC. And when we got some stats to present, I got one from Spark, and it was a huge difference between your consultant's fees. Like, for instance, it was, I'm looking here, instead of like a payback of 56 years, or what was it, 54 years, if all else fails, put your glasses on. Okay, so there was a huge difference because it was an 8 to 12 year payback. And so not 54 years. And also, just doing the math, what they suggested between 15,000 and 25,000 per slot, which would make it 210 and 350 instead of 540. So all I ask, don't spend money on another consultant. See what Newmarket is doing. I mean, share and say, well, okay, like, we got this. Are we out to lunch, or are you really going ahead with that high? And just see, and then from there, maybe go on.
Yeah, so thank you very much for forwarding that information to us. No, it's perfectly fine. I think that it was helpful. We did reach out to the consultants that were working with Newmarket, and we've established that our price includes a lot of the construction elements that their prices didn't include. So ours is full installation, full construction cost,
So
and theirs didn't include a lot of that. So, and sometimes there's retrofit versus a new installation, but those were basically the main differences and why there's a difference in the payback period.
Last comment is, you know, when I looked at your presentation and looked at the Radio Shack, and I thought, you know, yeah, having it down, I mean, you're not to replace a shed, but to have something that actually represents a radio antenna. And like Dr. Shelton said, to actually have that would be a lot more than a shed. And to look, I'm all for looking at that, but not reconstructing a shed.
Well, I think some of the things that we were bantering around is even just having sort of a frame of a building that's sort of the same shape and size, sitting on a concrete pad. You'd have a plaque inside that visitors could walk up, read the plaque. We could bring the antenna over to represent that. So it's more of a representation and a homage to the original building, although the original building's unsafe, and we'd like to decommission it. So the process for us then would be come up with a design for something like that, work with our heritage committee, bring it to them with an application. And if we can work out the details, then that would go to council for approval. But again, there's a number of options that we can look at, and we'll work with the stakeholders to come up with
Great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marsh. Who is on my list to speak next? Mr. McKay, or would you like to? Go ahead.
Sure. And just to pick up on the Radio Shack, you know, I know it's sort of not in great shape, and hazardous materials is quite an issue. And in one report, 17 perhaps, I think they were looking at about $85,000 demolition cost for it, and that a recreation would be about double that. So perhaps uh, instead of spending full $1,000 on rebuilding, perhaps that money be used for other heritage sites.
Yeah, we're definitely open to whatever suggestions the committee wishes us to pursue. So you're correct in terms of the magnitude of the cost. I think based on today's dollars, we're well over about 100,000 now to decommission it, and probably 200,000 just to try and repair the building, possibly even more, because you don't know what's in there. Once you start digging up things, you're going to have to reconstruct maybe more than you think. But just from a visual observation, that's what we've estimated. You could potentially just tear it down and rebuild like complete structure for well over 300,000. So there are numerous options to us that we can do to honor it, including, like you suggest, maybe providing some other features or having a special area set up for that specific.
Certainly the heritage aspect of the site recognized is one of the things that really makes this a very distinct part. So spend all this staff work through the process some years ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. You're absolutely right. And it is our duty to make sure that this National Historic Site and identified cultural heritage landscape under the Ontario Heritage Act is dutifully cared for. Thank you very much. Next person on my speakers list is Deputy Mayor Councillor Chan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, staff, for very comprehensive and colorful presentation. And as well, thank you for delegate, Dr. Ian Shelton. You make reference to bylaw 109 as the mover of that motion back in 2009. I remember very vividly about cultural attributes. So thank you for mentioning that. As the Madam Chair was saying, that's probably something we will have to talk, not so much today, but nonetheless, I think the important parts staff have brought to the committee's attention is that based on what I'm seeing in the photo, I've been there, and yes, it's certainly in the state of disrepair. But what are the options? I think that's something we can talk about it. And my colleagues on the committee mentioned about entrance sign, and I think it's already touched on. That would be nice to have also recognition of the being Canada, one of Canada's National Historic Site. So that's one aspect. And relating to the entrance signage, I noticed that in the slides 10, 11, those are talking about options. I'm wondering what would be the staff thoughts about, would that be open? Would that be time allowed to open for providing input by the public or considering input by the public? Like that to me, like it's a big corn, reminds me of go to Sudbury, no, remind me of the Sudbury, that big brown nickel.
Yeah.
So I thought we have 220,000 people strong in here, in particular, with the perhaps very creative. Well, just look at all these RH 150 murals, we have very talented artists in the city. And I'm just wondering for you, Madam Chair, is there any time allowance or consideration that may be given to have a sort of a public design contest, whatever the right term is, through you, Madam Chair?
Yeah, through the chair to the councillor. We hadn't anticipated a design contest, but if the committee would like us to go down that path, it's potentially something that we could do. I just want to mention, though, that you're going to get 209 or 220,000 different opinions on what the right solution is, but we're more than happy to accommodate the committee if that's the wishes.
Thank you. I'm very mindful about, take to 10 people, 25 good ideas, then how to decide. But obviously, like any kind of contest, I take it, it will be people who are in the industry, so to speak, could have reasonable criteria developed. I'm more thinking about in terms of whether in fact it might in some way affecting or impacting, particularly in a negative sense of the timeline, that I'm more concerned about that, the timeline. And that's why, through Madam Chair, I'd like to hear that. That's why I'm using the term allowance. You have a 2-week, 4-week period. So that's what I'm trying to get at through you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, through the chair. We are fortunate in the sense that the entrance feature is part of assignment number 5, which is proposed to start in 2025. So if we are able to combine the Panhandle Works with the Alva Stoico Arena parking lot rehab, the entrance feature is one package. That gives us 2024 to go through all those steps, look at it as one big picture rather than as little pieces. And we could definitely incorporate something like that within that time frame.
Okay, thank you. It's good to hear that we have some time. So something to think about. And I don't think we need to put in anything on the recommendations, but I think it's noted publicly on record, and I see the directors nodding. So something to think about. After RH 150, you get another excitement on design competition or contest. Now, moving on from that, I am not sure about, in particular, showing weekday, weekend, the additional parking space, because that seems to be, I don't want to use that term, a spill over to existing residential neighborhood. I think that's something that a particular local councillor, Councillor Shiu, that's something that you may want to think about that too. To the extent that if we can minimize at all potential counting those number of spaces, I think that to me is a better option. The other thing I am mindful is also, particularly if I could, is maybe not for this committee to worry about. On the bottom of page 7, it's talking about anytime, well, not anytime, it's talking about the tender bid prices seem to go up. I take it beyond the expectation of staff. So I'm trying to get a sense from what we know now, because it may change tomorrow. What are we talking about? 1.5 times more, 2.5 times more, without actually getting the real numbers?
Yeah, so we've been,
Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, we've been tracking all of our bid prices this year. So in some cases, we've had a 30% increase in price. We've had a couple that come in almost right on budget. But in general, it could be anywhere from 10 to 30% increase. What we've done now is we re-examined all our cost estimates based on those inflationary pressures that we're feeling, and we've adjusted our costs. Now, looking at our medium and long-term projects too, because they're far off in the distance, we want to have something that's a sustainable approach to delivering those as well. So we're going to be, again, reevaluating those projects next year and coming to the Capital Sustainability Steering Committee with sort of a recommendation and a plan to address those price increases.
Thank you. I know I only have 23 seconds left. Maybe I'll come in around 2, but a very quick question. On the Panhandle Works, has the pickleball community be consulted? Because that's something I know back in July of council made decision of pause, but now we're talking about, it may not be particular for this committee, but from my end, it would be good to hear from staff, from Madam Chair, the internal community. Yes or no?
So I'm going to defer that question to our partners in recreation. I believe they are looking, or is it planning? I'm not sure. Looking at the pickleball and tennis strategy and monitoring some of the outcomes that they've done already to implement pickleball, just to look at the demand across the city. So
thank you. I'll wait till 1 or 2 then. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Valencia.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Kwan, would you like to add anything?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll redirect the question to Director Flores.
Director Flores. The floor is yours.
Through you, Madam Chair. As you may recall from the report that went forward in July, the pause was intended to allow some monitoring for the recent improvements between 2022 to 2024. So to allow that time, the tennis pickleball strategy is forecast to start in 2025. So at that time, consultation will definitely begin.
Thank you. If you want to revisit that in your second round, you may, Deputy Mayor Chen. Okay, before I come to my comments, do any other members of council who are not members of this committee, do you wish to speak? Do you wish just to say anything? No, not Mayor David West. Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Just quickly and through you, Madam Chair, definitely appreciate the presentation today. There was a reference being made to alternative funding sources, and one of those being community fundraising, which I'm certainly all in favor of. But there was also mention of private sponsorship, which is something that I always get concerned of. There's names on buildings that I don't particularly like seeing now. So I'm just wondering with that reference, what you might be actually thinking or looking at.
Through the chair to the councillor. We are not actively seeking sponsorship at this time. So all of the projects that we've identified have been put into our capital budget and forecast. So we've tried to secure the funds that way. If there are opportunities that council wants to bring forward or the committee want to bring forward, we're open to that. We're working with Lise and her team to secure grant funding. We're looking for every opportunities from that point of view. But at this time, we have no plans to go out and actively pursue sponsors for the DDO.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I appreciate your input. Okay, so let me just make my comments on the first round, and then we can go to a round two. So just a number of issues, simple, but just a few. First of all, to Director Levesque, thank you very much for your discussion with me the other day. Last week, it was very, very informative. I would like to refer to the domes on the roof that Dr. Shelton brought forward. And I would just want to say on the public record, I don't believe we need to make further recommendation here, but that continued discussions happen and continue with the DDO defenders. I know I was privy to one of them in the library. It was fantastic as to how we can better utilize the domes on the roofs, what it is that we have to do, what we can do, what we can't do. So I know that will continue. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. So generally speaking, those maintenance items are handled through our facilities group. We are reporting here on more capital infrastructure, but we're more than happy to bring those items to the committee if you want to update, like painting and things like that. We generally don't want to bring to the committee, but we are working with the DDO defenders. In fact, two of our directors did meet with them this summer to talk about some of those maintenance and other issues that came up.
Excellent. So would it be okay if Dr. Shelton contacts you directly with any specific questions that he would like answered as to where we are, where we're going, what we can do, what we can't do?
Yes, absolutely. Dr.
Shelton, thank you. So about the Radio Shack, I totally understand that it has to be decommissioned. It's a no-brainer. Unfortunately, because of the material from which it was made in the 1930s, we can't do that now. But I definitely would like to see, as we move through the process, and also as we move through our budget processes in the capital budget and 10-year capital plan, looking at what we can actually do for future representation of the Radio Shack. A plaque, yes, of course, some kind of perhaps wayfinding signs leading people towards where the Radio Shack was. But I do believe that we can do a lot more, as Dr. Shelton also said. We have the foundations of radio antennas there, that this could all be reincorporated. A lot of the time, unfortunately, or fortunately, so much focus is put on the 74-inch telescope that the 8-acre radio observatory site is a little bit forgotten, but it shouldn't be, because as Dr. Shelton said, Dr. Ernie Sequest there were remarkable findings that came from that particular location of the Radio Shack and the 8-acre antenna farm. So again, it doesn't have to be, I don't believe we have to add a recommendation here. I think as long as we know going forward what our steps are and how we can best achieve what we want to achieve. I know we don't have finance here with us today, but I'm sure in your ELT discussions that would come up specifically as we move into the budget process for 23.
Yeah, I can make a commitment to you that we can come up with some options and present them to the next committee meeting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. And the pump house as well. That's much further away. I understand that, but I do like the idea of it possibly being used as a mechanical house for a splash pad. I think that would be absolutely wonderful. And with some kind of commemorative plaque on the pump house so that people understand exactly what that little structure was, because we saved that in our mediation sessions with the OMB. And the DDO defenders actually saved that little pump house. Otherwise, it would be nothing but dust now. Yeah. But to the developers, with thanks to the developer, they said absolutely we can save it. Where would you like us to put it? So that's why it's now on the parking lot. So that it does represent a very important part of the observatory's very, very beginnings, when it would bring water in from the Bayview main trunk, because there was no water on the property. So, and water was needed in order, first of all, for people to, maybe drink it, but also because it was an absolute necessity when the telescope, the lens, had to be re-illuminized and all of that. So it does serve a really, really great purpose. And I must thank you for protecting it as much as you have. That is excellent. I would also like to see that I'll get into the discussion about, I'll go to a second round as well. I'll get into the discussion about the solar, but that we also have on-site EV charging stations. I would imagine in our parking lots that we're going to have that, or that it'll at least be looked at.
Yes, so we're planning for 14 EV parking stations. So based on our current policy in terms of percentage, which is I think about 16% of your proposed parking needs to be EV. That works out to be about 14 spaces. And as it turns out, we have a grouping of linear parking spots on the Panhandle Access Road. Right. That just sort of is perfect location for that.
Excellent. Thank you. And then with regards to the access road on the Panhandle, I definitely, it would be my choice that on slide 16, that we use the dashed red most western side of that for the road. I believe that, as you say, it'll give us much more space for passive play area, or passive public area, but also, as you and I have discussed, and as I've discussed with the Sheltons, that it is very important that we protect and preserve what is known as the Solar System Park, which was designed by Dr. Tom Bolton, and that's really part of his incredible legacy. So I'll go to the second round, but definitely, I definitely prefer that most western edge.
Thank you. And just to make a comment on that too, in the black dashed rectangle, the solar system art installation is basically in the bottom corner of that. So we definitely could try and protect that during construction. And if future sports facility is required, we may then at that time need to rethink how we would display that. But definitely we can protect it during this phase.
Good, thank you. And I know that Dr. Shelton and Dr. Cockday would be very happy to help you with any part of that as well. They really are de facto members of this committee as well. And there's much that can be done, but it's about protecting and preserving it because it is a very, very important part of the DDO's history. So I'm going to leave it at that now. I'm going to go to a second round. Ms. Marsh, you were the first. Oh, no, excuse me. Councillor Shu, go ahead. Go ahead. And then you, Ms. Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Concerning the Radio Shack, just want to make sure that will the heritage plaque to be placed in the same location as the shack? Is it right?
Yeah, I think we would try and commemorate it right in that location.
Okay. I've noticed Dr. Shelton's concerns. Can we provide one more option to explore the possibility? Like option 1 is only the plaque number. Option 2 is to explore the possibility to set up or to copy another one to make a dummy or to make it transparent to look through the inside how it works, and with a quick intro beside something like that. Can we provide one more option to explore the possibility of Dr. Shelton's idea?
Yes, absolutely. So what we would likely try and do is spend some time over the course of the next year to come up with some further refinements in some of those options and present it at the next steering committee.
Okay, good to know. So regarding the planning of the pickleball court, we all know that it's put it on hold. So how long would it take? How long would it take for the pause? Do you know how long would it take?
Well, I think Maria alluded that they will be going to the public in 2025. So they are investigating right now some of the other pickleball features that have been incorporated across the city and looking at the demand and then combining that with the pickleball strategy and the tennis strategy. So it's likely going to be on pause for a couple of years, at least at the DDO. If there is a recommendation to put something at DDO, at least now we've got a space that's been graded. It can be a future spot, or we can go with the long-term plan that was in the master plan originally, which is a tennis facility or tennis area.
2025. Is the city only focusing on conducting analysis of the combined tennis and pickleball needs? Is that the only options?
I'm going to ask Maria to come up.
Because how about considering the combined badminton and pickleball, because they share the same dimensions and markings, and it can be more options to make it indoors or make it in dome, something like that for all season use. Is it the only way, only focus on the combined of tennis and pickleball?
Through you, Madam Chair, the focus of the tennis pickleball strategy is under that scope. Tennis and pickleball, and that was what was directed under the Parks Plan that was approved by Council in 2022. And it does largely focus on the outdoor type of facilities. So badminton wouldn't be included with that.
Okay. So, okay, so that's all about my question. I have no question at this moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Shu. Next on the speakers list for the second round is Ms. Marsh.
Oh, just quickly, I was very happy to hear about a meadow element there because it does support the initiatives that we're doing with, the Mayor's Monarch Pledge and Bee City. We have to walk the talk, and I'm really glad that's there, and that's
Totally agree on that one. Thank you very much. Mr. McKay, would you like to have a second round?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Overall, just to say that there was the recreation area where there's tennis or football. I believe it was back in the original diagrams for the site. It was a type of active sports was always designated for that site. So it's really well, but ideally it has a nice mix of active sport. People are able various times. You see that still maintained.
Any comments, Director Levesque?
Yes, so the beauty of what we're proposing today is that we're preserving that area. So it will be graded out, so passive recreation until such time as the decision's made to move forward one way or the other. And then we can put in some active recreation there.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. And I do want, before I go to Deputy Mayor Chan, I do want to thank you for making note of during your presentation that the lighting for anything in the Panhandle and the bridge will be looked at as dark sky sites. So thank you very much. That's so important. Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at particular slide number 16. Madam Chair mentioned about this whole it's still called preferred alternative. So to me, I read that as there could be other alternatives. So I see a nodding. So I'm wondering to what extent that there may be opportunity I've been thinking about in some way. It might have potential linkage or impact on alternative sources of funding. The reason I said that, I'm looking at the path that goes, I guess, based on the slide going leftwards, that there is a corridor, presumably could be something like a 9x2 on both sides, could be like almost like not necessarily roses, but kind of a row of particular flowers. The idea I'm thinking of is like you go to any public hospital, particularly UHN in the United University Health Network in downtown Toronto, they would have wall of excellence on your way from an entrance to wherever ward you go to, and there are generous families would contribute, like I don't know what the dollar amount. Then they have a plaque, but here is in the nature. So it could be if there are kind of like almost flower garden, on both sides of that path, for I don't know what the ballpark may be for a contribution of 50 grams. I don't know. Like it could be something to think about, right? Not to have an answer. I'm just thinking it helps to beautify along the path of drive. Particular, that will be opportunity that this particular area, roses from certain parts of certain country, whatever the term may be, but not only beautify, but opportunity to generate perhaps additional funding. Now, I know the horticultural folks on recreation may looking at, okay, that's lots of work. That been made. Yes, of course. But if it helps to bring in some additional funding on top of beautifying areas, something to consider. So it's just a comment. Secondly, this may be a comment. Already we get the federal recognition. The observatory itself is a historic site of Canada. It's certainly, again, the city already declared back on September 30th, 2009, 14 years ago, the whole cultural heritage. But we never actually got one from the province. I'm wondering, it's not germane to today's committee meeting. Believe me, late Mayor Barrow and I and some other people, we try to get appoints to designate. But maybe if the reason I brought it up, I don't know to what extent designation might help to get money. The only reason I said that is that we do get active transportation funding from the federal government. Now, they may not have any direct relationship with the fact that we get Parks Canada National Historic Site, but if we get some recognition from the province through the Heritage Trust or some of the appropriate body, maybe the Heritage Advisory Committee can look into that, and it's a comment that perhaps we can expand the pie in terms of getting public funding recognition at a provincial level. Those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, staff, for making note. I kind of envision the community garden role on your way going from 16 all the way up. It hopefully might generate millions of dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Chan. That's a great idea. And I think we can also look at it as with what Ms. Marsh was saying, the pollinator gardens. So I think that we can put all of this together and we'll dovetail everything together, which would be great for the pollinators and the birds and our eyes. So with that, I'm going to go to myself on a second round. Just a couple of things that I didn't get to. And I know that Director Levesque, we have discussed this, and as I have with Executive Director Massaro, thank you very much for all the work that has been done for the trailways and the pathways. Really appreciate that. And some people might not understand, some residents might not understand why it's actually a hard surface, but it's that way so that you can allow it's AODA also compliant, so that people who are not able can access those pathways as well. We did have some problems at the very beginning with some complaints about people driving their cars on that, and I know that we've dealt with that. And if you could just confirm with us, the committee, Director Levesque, that barriers are going to be installed to prevent that from happening again.
So the gates are actually going in tomorrow.
Oh, excellent.
So it's good timing.
What do they look like?
P gates. So it will prevent vehicles from entering, but it'll allow
Gotta go around.
pedestrians. Yes.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. When we look at the design, the signage and the design features on 11 and 10, slide deck 11 and 10, I love the idea of having the stars shine through and the backlighting on the actual name of David Dunlap Observatory Park. I think that's fabulous. When you look at the three pictures, I know there's a lot of work to be done there, but yes, we have to make sure that children and teenagers don't use it as a playground and a climbing mechanism. And so I know that those thoughts will go in there very, very, very well. Referring to, let me just look at this. Okay. The trails. Director Levesque, I know you and I have discussed this, but I would like to also bring it onto the public record that we need to ensure that we have signage on those trails that inform the public that they must be quiet. There's no music, no screaming and shouting, no partying along the trailways, because they are located within a wildlife forest, and we are actually the guests in there, not the wildlife. So if we could have something on those trails that really it's very specific to visitors to the park, to residents, that this is a quiet space and that we enjoy it together with the wildlife, the birds, the deer, the coyotes, maybe some wolves, and small animals like voles and rabbits. I mean, they're all there. And I just want to make absolutely sure that anybody who walks through it understands that. They need to be aware of where they are. Is that possible?
Yes, definitely it's possible. I checked with my team. Right now, there's no formal signs that say, quiet and noise, but there are a lot of signage in there about bylaws and things like that. So we could definitely investigate something around noise levels and activities to protect wildlife, whether it's a, just a quiet wildlife area here or something along those lines. But my team can definitely investigate something for that.
That's great. Thank you. And is there going to be a pedestrian zebra crossing or something on Donelda Drive where the two pathways meet? Or is it there already? No, just to indicate that it's a pedestrian crossing on the roadway. No. Okay, it's just something to think of, because sometimes there can be some zooming up and down Donalda Drive, and it's a bit of a blind curve. So signage is great, but excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, let me just go through my wildlife design feature hills timeline. Okay, I'm pretty much done. I appreciate all the work that has been done on the timeline that we were shown on the slide, and I just would like to bring to the public's and to the committee's attention that a lot of these discussions, where it comes to solar power, where it comes to what's going to happen with the sports facilities, how we are going to do the roads, all of that, these are capital project infrastructure issues. And they will come to us through the budget process. Our 10-year capital plan, it will be part of that. But I want to assure the committee and members of the public and the Sheltons that will all come to us in the form of budget presentations. So I have absolutely no doubt about that. And just for my last 30 seconds, I do agree with Committee Member Marsh and Committee Member McKay that solar power, if we could look further into whether or not solar power is actually something that could be feasible for this particular site. We would like to be able to do that because it's all about nature and it's all about what we're doing in the sky, the sky and the stars. It's definitely an excellent concept, but also it would become part of a capital project and part of that 10-year capital plan. And we need to ensure that all the dots that you see along the timeline for the DDO, that they're all taken care of in their particular space, so that everything is smooth. And so I know that this will be looked at some point. We will continue looking at this and see whether or not it is feasible. But I do trust our members of staff who come forward, and the consultants who come forward and give us these numbers and say that it is not. It's not feasible at this time. Maybe, but not at this time. So with that, let me see. Let me go back to my agenda. Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead. Gloria.
Just, one of the things about noise, I think instead of telling people to shut up, to tell them to listen. Listen to the birds. And then you could even suggest, what birds do you hear? The hawk? Do you hear the owl? Do you hear and I've heard a yellow-breasted chat in the Jefferson Forest.
Yeah.
That's a first. So, maybe that's making them more aware of nature. So that's all. Okay.
No, that's a wonderful idea. It's like, I remember being told when my children were very small, if you want to get their attention, speak to them very softly.
Yeah.
So they have to stop yelling and screaming and banging their feet, and they'll listen to what you have to say. So great point. Okay. So we are on agenda item 6.1. It was brought forward by Councillor Shu. Mr. Clerk, would you like us to include Dr. Shelton's letter and receipt of the presentation separately? Okay. So on the docket, what we have right now as 6.1 is A, B, and C. That's staff presentation and staff report SRIES 23007 regarding Richmond Hill David Dunlap Observatory Park project update be received with thanks. That the site servicing Panhandle Works and parking lot be combined with the 16th Avenue entrance feature and Elva Stoico Arena parking lot rehabilitation, and that staff proceed with the construction in 2025. I like the idea of that bundle, and see that the Radio Shack building be decommissioned and a heritage plaque installed to commemorate its cultural significance with more to come. So could I have everyone on committee vote on that, please? A, B, and C. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so you want me to receive Dr. Shelton's letter? Okay. Could I have a member of committee please raise your hand? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Chan. All those in favor? Raise your hand. Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. Okay, so I believe, Mr. Clerk, if I'm correct, we are at number 7, which is the date of the next meeting, which is at the call of the chair, but I also think it's at the call of the staff as well. So whenever the next meeting will be, I would imagine it's going to be sometime in the new year. Executive Director Massaro?
Through the chair, what we've been aiming to do is at least once a year, and we've generally found that in the spring is a good time to report. However, based on some of the things that were going on, we were here in February with some of the advancements, the opportunity to get this recommendation approved in order to go to tender as soon as reasonably possible was important. So we came again. So while this year may have been an anomaly, generally speaking, one time a year is what we'd like to do unless there's need to come back for an additional meeting.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. And again, my thanks to all the staff members who are here with us today in council chambers and some who may be online as well. Thank you for the work that you are doing with regards to the Observatory Park, with our David Dunlap Observatory Park. It is, you all know how important it is to me and how deep within my heart it lies. And I am so grateful to see how this is all progressing. It's really quite remarkable and notable. So thank you again. Okay, so agenda item number 8 is adjournment. Could I have a member of committee, please? Thank you very much. Committee member Marsh for adjournment. All those in favor? Raise your hands. That's approved unanimously. Again, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.